don't. It was. Yeah,
Like,
don't do that.
do not let your kids watch this film. I will say that now. This film is not for children. Like, when I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, dog got burned alive. My dog.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Nerdtaku Podcast, where we watch it so you don't have to. I'm your host, Eli. With me is my good friend and co-host, Ben.
Hey guys, how's it going?
This week, we're reviewing The Butterfly Effect. My guy, spoiler warnings. Are they in this episode?
Absolutely.
Directors: Eric Bress, J. McKay Gruber. Main cast: Ashton Kutcher, Amy Smart, William Lee Scott. This whole experience, Ben, I sat there after watching it, really thought of the question, if you had his ability, Evan's ability in this film, where you can go back in time from just reading a journal entry or something, would you do it? For me, I wouldn't. Personally, that's a lot of responsibility in one moment to not fuck it up. And it's like that old, like, I think they say in the beginning of the film, it's like one little effect can affect something else on the other side of the world. The butterfly effect.
One little pebble can cause ripples on the other side of the world.
Yes, that's the quote. Exactly. What would you do, like, with that question?
I'm gonna be honest. I would be very tempted, and I'm pretty sure I would. There are things in my life that I probably would change, and to be honest, I would be tempted to do so.
I look at my life and I'm just like, there are goods, there are bads, there are uglies, and there are joyouses, but I don't know if I could willingly do it because I don't know where my relationships with, like, my niece would be, or like my dad. And I would never want to ruin those.
I understand that, but I also look at it and I'm like, what person in their life hasn't thought about being able to travel back and change something in their past?
Facebook always asks you that question. Would you take the red pill and go back 10 years and change something, or the blue pill where you would just stay and do nothing and make $1 million? It's like, I don't know.
Exactly. And I'm going to be just honestly, I think I would. I'm pretty sure I would be tempted enough to do it.
This film makes you ask that question. And I like that question. I like when a film makes you think on a question. That's basically the essence of the film. In your mind, would you do it? I don't know. But my younger self would say, hell yeah. My older self, with maturity and responsibility and understanding myself, I don't know. That's the thing. And this film does do that. This film came out in 2004. It got a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb. With the budget it had at $13 million, you see how, yes, that budget is considered low, but it made good money. Like, domestically, it made $57 million. Worldwide, almost $100 million.
And I can see why. It was a damn good film.
It's good.
I forgot how much I love this film. Even as a younger kid who didn't really understand, because I have not seen this film since I was like 8 or 9. I was really young when I saw it, and I did not understand anything about it. I didn't get it. It was the plot is so hard to understand unless you're older and understand and can get the concept of time and the effects of changing things throughout the past. But as a younger kid, I didn't understand that. So I just liked the fact that it had some fun parts and some action, and enough that it was a good film to me as a kid, but not enough to want to watch it again. That's why I haven't watched it since then. Then I watched it again for this podcast, and my mind was just like, holy shit, that plot line makes so much more sense now. I can actually understand what's going on. And if I were in Evan's shoes, I would probably do what he did, trying to save the love of his life. All it was.
This whole film was just his mistake of trying to fix something that he wanted, which was love. Because he never got it as a kid. You could see it throughout this whole film. You could see that he never understood what love was, and he was trying to obtain it through this one person. And trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. Then he figured it out. But it took a great sacrifice. And it hurts. It hurts to know that sometimes in your journey, you just gotta make the ultimate sacrifice.
Yep.
So we're gonna go through this. The first one is plot.
I gave plot a 1.
I gave plot. See, I'm in between a 0.75 and a 1. I'm in between. I really enjoyed it. I found the overarching plot to be great. I think through this whole film, I think I got myself confused a little bit at one point, but overall I understood the whole arching plot point. So I gave it a 0.75, but I'm in between. I just, from the experience, I just felt like it was it was missing something to me. I don't know what it was. Like, I just felt it could have been like half a step better, but I liked it. Overall, I liked it. So I'm in that stuck in between. Maybe your point of view can convince me which one to pick.
Let me explain to you why I gave it a 1.
Yeah, let me hear you. Let me hear you on this.
This film had you questioning what the fuck was happening. At first, it starts out with him running through this hospital, writing something down, not understanding where he is, what's going on in your point of view, because it's not explained. Then he goes back into the past because he's able to find his journal and read a journal entry, but you're completely lost. You have no idea what's going on right at the start. Then throughout, it starts building on this plot line of Evan having these blackouts as a kid. And then it skips to a different scene after something had happened, something major. You have no idea what happened. You just know the after effects. So you're still confused. You have no idea what's going on. Then he becomes an adult, and his life is running pretty smoothly. He's in college. He's having a good time. He's got a pretty awesome roommate. He starts finding these old journal entries, and he reads one. The room starts getting blurry, and all of a sudden, boom, you're back to him as a kid. And you're like, wait, what? Then the story starts to progress, and then you start to understand, oh, he's jumping timelines. Then he figures out how to control this power, and he starts using it to fix all the shit that happened in his past. Kylie and him doing the video for Kylie's father, where he's a complete pedophile. He makes it so that Kylie never gets touched. Kylie has a better life because of that. But then the ripple is that Tommy never got the love or the attention from Kylie. And so he turned out to be a fuck up and beats the shit out of Evan. So then he goes back in time again after he meets up with Lenny and finds out that Lenny's kind of screwball loose because of what happened as a kid when the dynamite went off. There's just all these events in his life that he has to fix, or he feels like he has to fix. But when he does, it affects something else throughout that timeline. And the whole time, you're trying to figure out which timeline he's going to end on, or which timeline is the real timeline. And you don't get that until the very end when he finally burns all the journals and said, "This is the one I'm staying at. I'm not changing anything else." And you find out that his father is in the insane asylum and tries to kill him when he goes to visit him because his father had the same ability and he didn't want his son to affect any more of the timeline. So the only way he could fix that, and the only way he thought that he could fix that, was by trying to kill Evan at that point. There's just so much to this story. It's
Mhm.
so confusing. You're second guessing everything. You're trying to figure out, and you have to think. You can't not pay attention to the screen because something different is happening throughout this entire film. And I love films like that. I love having to figure out, I love having to deduct and see what's going on. This plot was beautifully delivered. Everything that happened showed what could possibly happen if we could go back in time and change something. And I loved it. It was a strong delivery on that plot. Strong delivery that if you could go back in time, would you do it? That's the basic plot line right there. All he wanted to do was fix Kylie's life, and it fucked up a lot of the stuff in the timeline in doing so. I loved it.
Yeah, no, what you said resonated. I gave it a 1. Like, I was in that in between. And yeah, no, the interconnecting timeline story plot, yes. Acting.
0.75.
I gave it a 0.75. Ashton Kutcher could have done better. I felt like he could have been a little bit of a stronger actor. I felt like some of the lines he delivered was very mumbly. He is one of the stronger characters in this film, but I love the little Evan. I love that actor. He at 7, it was Logan Lerman, and I loved him. The kid was so electric. He ran with the 7-year-old mindsets very well, and I really liked his deliver on that. Other than that, everyone else was good. Nothing standoutish. Nothing really eye-popping. I did like Lenny, like the older Lenny. I really liked his acting when he was painting those models, and then he just loses it on Evan. I love the delivering on that because it's like you could see the trauma still resonating with him years later, and like, you forgot me. Oh, so good. It was just good. It was not amazing. So I give it a 0.75.
I gave it a 0.75 because I agree with what you're saying. Being that it's Kutcher's 12th film that he was in, or 10th film, but 12th appearance because he did a couple TV series before that. He did well, but it's not his best. I've seen better. He has quite a few really good ones after that, and it just wasn't delivered as well as I'd hoped. But that being said, his character was still strong. He delivered Evan in a great way, but there were quite a few mumbly wumblies in there that he didn't give his best performance. It was good, but it wasn't great. And I feel like Amy as the supporting actress, uh she was all right, but her character was very mundane. Like there wasn't really much to her. I don't feel like she was important to the story, but there wasn't much there.
Exactly.
Her character could have been brought out more. She could have done more with.
She was forgettable.
Yeah, she just wasn't really present.
Exactly.
She had some strong parts that she delivered pretty well, but like when she was really high on one timeline or she was really happy in another timeline, that could have been there were many times when she could have been portrayed by someone else, or it made me feel like it was like her first performance or maybe her second. It wasn't, and in her career I'm pretty sure that was
She's a well-decorated actress. It's crazy how decorated she is. And at this point, she had dozens upon dozens of roles before this. She was 11 years in the game. So this shouldn't have felt like a generic role.
She just wasn't present for the film.
Yeah.
She put off some good parts, but for the most part, it wasn't there. Then there was, well, to be honest, it was pretty much just her performance that I had problems with. Eldon did a great job playing Lenny, especially he when he was fucked up because of the dynamite incident on the first timeline that Evan visited, and he attacks Evan saying it's your fault, you know, all this. And then there's the other timeline when the dynamite didn't go off, but Tommy still killed the dog, and that fucked Lenny up. Like, no matter what Evan did, Lenny got fucked up. And the way Eldon portrayed his he's not there because of everything that happened, all the trauma, and he couldn't figure out how to talk to anybody about it. And so he's just in his room making his model planes. It was outstanding. It was very well done. Tommy as the bad guy, beautiful. I don't know any other way to say it. He scared me, and I wasn't even. I was just watching the damn film. He was someone who was hunting Evan because Evan fell in love with his sister. Just wow,
It was unsettling.
very, very, very well done. Overall, the acting was very well done. Just Amy could have done better. Ashton also could have done a bit better.
Character development.
That got a 0.75.
I gave it a 0.5. The only one, because the timeline all confusey wazzy woody woody booty, Evan was the only one who could develop. He was the only one in this whole story who could develop because everyone else changed due to what Evan did. And the thing is that that's it. Evan was he figured out his issues. He figured out that he had to give up the greatest sacrifice ever was love. He had to give it up. But then he realized that his life was better after that. And it took him, 4 or 5 tries to figure out this crap on what he needed. At one point, he was a cripple in one timeline. So, yeah, he had to really figure this crap out, and he developed a lot. No one else really developed. You could see maybe Lenny, but Lenny's timeline changed so dramatically that he didn't have time to develop. So Evan is the overall only developed person in this. And it was good. But for just him, I couldn't give it anything more than a 0.5.
I gave it a 0.75 because, yes, it is only Evan that develops because there are so many timelines that Evan goes through, but all he's trying to do is fix what he broke or fix Kylie's life and Lenny's life. That's what he wanted. He didn't want anything for himself. He never once went back in time to help himself. He always went back to try to save Kylie or Lenny. His development was so strong throughout this film that it deserved the 0.75. Yes, it was only him, but that's because it was only him that was jumping through timelines and could remember every timeline that he jumped into. I loved that everything was getting so broken that he had to learn what the timeline was, figure out who was broken in that timeline, jump back again to try to fix that timeline, jump back again to fix that timeline, until he found the timeline, the one fix that worked out for all of them, which was basically Evan had to be out of their lives for anything to work, for Kylie to be able to progress and for Lenny to be able to progress and Tommy not become a douchebag. He basically had to leave their lives. It was the strongest because these people were the biggest part of his childhood until he moved away. And he loved them so very much, but he had to give them up in order for their lives to be good. And when he finally found the timeline that worked, where Lenny was with Kylie Tommy was doing good. He was going to college and getting his degree. Evan took those journals and burned every single one of them. That is huge in his development because he used those to be able to go back and fix what he needed, what he felt needed to be fixed. But now that they're gone, he can no longer do that. He gave up his special ability for his friends. It's powerful. It's his development was strong throughout that the 0.75 is well deserved, in my opinion.
Why couldn't you give it a 1?
For the fact that nobody else could develop. He had a very powerful development, but then again, everybody else needs development too. Especially even if your antagonist gets development in the way of
Regression?
regression. Tommy had some regression, but mostly due to the effect of the timeline rather than himself. Nobody else could really develop because he's the only one that could remember the timeline, and therefore Evan's development is the main focus throughout this whole film.
You know, you brought up a good points, and I'm bringing mine up to a 0.75. I do agree that without Evan, the story couldn't be a thing, and the character development was just, it was there through each timeline. You could see him, like, even when he was freaking out as a frat boy, he realized he didn't want that. He realized he didn't want that lifestyle. He liked him knowing his teacher. He liked that development. So he went back to change it again so he didn't kill Tommy. Sound and music.
I gave that a 1.
I give it a 0.75.
I think throughout the film, the music kept you reeled into every scene, especially right at the beginning. He's running away from whoever, all these doctors, and it's high, intense music. You're trying to figure out what's going on. The music is making it all the more better. Then he gets into the office and he's able to read the journal, get back in time. He writes this is my last entry. I can't remember what the letter said, but it was something along.
If you read this, then the timeline didn't get fixed.
Right, something like that. And that music that went with that scene pulled you in. And then every aspect, everything that he went through, as far as Tommy attacking him, high intense music, Tommy killing his dog, phew, that was like the music intensified enough that you were focused on that music along with what was going on. There was so many parts throughout this film that just sucked you in just because the music intensified or it doled out and became a nice melody when happy moments were happening, or throughout this film the music matched the intensity of the scene, whether it be a happy scene, sad scene, or intense person is killing someone scene. Like everything matched perfectly.
I agree with you. The music was really good. It was spot on throughout the film. My thing about the 0.75 is the sound effects. I felt that the whooshing around him when he was doing the going back in time, I thought it was good, but it wasn't something standing out to me. I really enjoyed what they did for the sound effects, special effects. It just wasn't there. It was good, but not great. The music was spot on. I agree with you there. It was matched every scene. It was really clean. It was very well done. I just am critiquing the sound effects on this one. I think they could have done a little better.
I actually really liked when his timeline would change and the whooshing. It was like you were being pulled into some other dimension to get to that other timeline. I felt like it matched what they were showing on screen really well.
Cinematography.
I got a 1.
I was thinking about it. I was thinking between a 0.75 and a 1. Right now I'm on a 1. I did feel like there was At some points, I really did like the 360 camera they were using. The going around Evan. That was a cool thing they were doing. I like some of the close up shots they did when they were all 13 and like the aftermath of the dog dying, and you see Lenny with the stick, and like I really like some of the shot selection they did throughout this film. The tone they gave it, I like what they were doing with the colors in the shots. They kept it very monotoned throughout each shot they were doing. They had this like noir type lens. It was so clean. It was there. You felt the grunge. You in each timeline, you felt what it was supposed to be. You felt that fraternity vibe, like college, perfect, yay, yay. But then you felt the meth addict vibe when you met up with Kylie at her apartment where she was slinging crack and all this and sleeping with dudes to get that stuff. You saw the vibe in each shot. I love the over the camera first person angle shot where they were talking back and forth at the diner. It was clean. The shots were very meticulous and very well plotted out.
I agree wholeheartedly. I loved the beginning sequence when they were going through the before the movie even started. It was the opening credits and it had the butterfly opening into the brain scanner thing. Like the brain opened up into the butterfly. That was really well done. I like how it took the brain and made it into a butterfly. It was cool. But I think that the thing that I loved the most about the cinematography was the the 360 spins with the room starting to shake and change and quiver, and everything just started to morph together, and then boom, he's into a new timeline. Like it was it hypnotized you. It made you it made you have your attention fully on your screen, and I don't know what it just I think that they did an amazing job to show that he's switching timelines by blurring the screen, making everything morph together, kind of made like you were on shrooms. Everything just kind of started swaying and moving and morphing, and like it was stupendous. I loved it.
Directing,
I gave that a 1.
I gave it a 0.75. I could feel the director's inexperience with actors. I could feel it because of the direction that Ashton Kutcher and Amy Smart did with their characters. It just didn't feel like it was there. These guys were inexperienced. Their writing was the best part. Their story intricacies were very well there. I loved what they did with the plot and the story. It was so good. It was the acting direction they were trying to give. I don't think they had the experience enough to give it to them. And with Amy Smart and Ashton Kutcher, the dynamic was kind of there, but the director could have umphed it, but their inexperience did show. But overall, they gave a good style through their writing and their storytelling.
So yeah, I gave them a 1 because I feel like they knew exactly what they wanted, and the the way it was delivered was perfect. They wanted the story to go out. They wanted it to be confusing as hell until you could piece the pieces together. They wanted your attention to not leave the screen. They wanted your thought process. They didn't want to give away the plot. They wanted you to figure out the plot. And I loved it. I'm going to say that the chemistry between Ashton Kutcher and Amy Smart is their fault, the actor's fault. I don't think the directors had anything to do with that. I think they could have done better in directing it a little bit, but I'm not going to dock them points for that. That's on Kutcher and Smart. It should have been them who fixed the chemistry that wasn't actually there. And you could feel that through the film. Like their characters are supposed to love each other, but you could see that there wasn't really anything there because of their acting. I solely focused on the fact that the directors wrote a story, they wanted it delivered, and they got it delivered. The way they wanted it to be delivered was through confusion and piecing things together. The audience had to piece things together to try to figure out what the hell was going on, and they delivered that perfectly.
Attraction.
0.75.
I gave it a 0.5. When you start watching the film, it's going everywhere. And I got confused a little bit in the beginning, like everyone does. Everyone gets confused. And as what you said, as a kid, I watched this as a kid around the same age, around 9, 10 years old. And coming back to the film, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna expect. I was a little distant. And there's some subjects in this that hits a little hard. There's subjects in here that are really hard to like stomach. The father filming his kids to make like child porn, and the fact that you see a 13-year-old child throwing an M80 in a mailbox and letting a baby and a mom die. And then watching Tommy kill a dog, covering it in gasoline, setting it on fire. You don't see it, but you see the aftermath. Or like Lenny stabbing. It's a very intense film. So the attraction for me, it could be too much. And at some points I'm like, whoa, I forgot how intense this film got. So it was sometime for me, it was just pushing me away a little bit, but I love the story. But yeah, it was pushing me away a little from the intensity.
I was pulled in from the beginning in this film, and throughout I had to figure out what the fuck was going on. I understand how it could get to be too much, but that didn't really bother me much. I was so focused on the story and the trying to figure out what the fuck was going on throughout that the little things like the baby and the mom dying and the dog being burned and the child pornography did bother me, but put those into the plot line that those events had to happen in order for the plot to progress. Because if those events didn't happen, then there'd be no reason for him to go back in time and try to fix these events.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so pulled in from the beginning that I had to focus on this film because again, I haven't seen it since I was 8, 9, somewhere around there. And I couldn't remember anything about this film. So I had to really focus. I had to put my attention on everything that was going on and trying to figure out what pieces to the puzzle go where. It was just so much that I thoroughly enjoyed enough that the little side things didn't bother me. So I was attracted with the intense music, the dark scenes, the having to piece everything together, the acting through Tommy and Lenny and Evan. It was just all there, and it pulled me in from the start, and I loved it.
All right. Dialogue.
0.75.
Give it a 0.75. First one of the day matching.
Yay!
Yay! All right. What made you not give it a 1?
A lot of the line deliveries, there weren't a lot that popped out to me. I only have one written down here. It had some pretty great dialogue, but there's only one line that really popped at me, you know?
I feel the lines in this film were very generic. I think the only thing I could say that stood out was that little the chaos theory. The pebble does something and it affects something on the other side of the world. That whole that mindset in the beginning of the film that they explain. And it's like that's it. Like there's nothing there. Lenny my favorite part was Lenny freaking out at Evan the first time with that trauma. He was like, "It's your fault. It's your fault." But that's it. There's nothing. The film doesn't consistently give give memorable lines. You just remember it's a good film, but it's nothing because of the words they say. It's the overall arching plot, the acting, it's the cinematography, it's the sound, not the lines delivered.
I feel like the lines given were to move the plot forward. There was
Exactly.
nothing that popped except for one line that I really enjoyed. It's when Evan and Kylie are talking, and Kylie says something to him about, "I know you, Evan," and this is like the third timeline, and Evan's freaking mind is going insane, and he says, "You think you know me? I don't even know me." Like that hit because he doesn't. He's been through timeline after timeline after timeline, and every time he goes to a new timeline, he's somebody completely different because of something that's happened in that ripple. And he has to figure out who he is before he can try to figure out what's going on in that timeline. And it hit really strong because I don't even go through timeline, and timeline, and I feel like I don't even know who I am. I'm trying to figure out who I am, but I don't know who I am. And people who say who they know me, I'm like, how can you know me if I don't know me? And it struck a chord with me because I feel that. But for the most part, what I feel like the dialogue is for is to move the plot along. It didn't have really anything that popped out.
Scenery.
0.5.
I gave it a 0.5. Second one. Man, we're matching at the end. We're just syncing it up.
It's always at the end.
It's always at the end. The scenery with the tones and the coloring, yeah, they're going for that noir, like deep, dark tone. But that was it. It was a dark tone. You just felt more of the angst in it than actually seeing any vibrance with the angst. So each scene that they picked was good, but nothing standout-ish. I just felt like I was watching mid 2000s inner city. Nothing stood out. Genericness. It wasn't eye candy. It wasn't popping. It just helped make the story flow.
I agree. There wasn't any eye-catching scenery. There was nothing that said, "Oh, wow, that's a very beautiful place," or "Ooh, this place is dark and dingy." Like everything was just basic. They didn't want to spend money on making places look better. So they just kind of went with, "Oh, here's a house, here's a dorm room, here's a bar, and here's a woods area for the kids to play." Pretty much basic.
And here's your generic hospital that's a mental asylum.
Right.
Recommended.
That one is a 1.
I give it a 0.75. If you're not comfortable with some of the subjects, it might be much. There is blood and there's an intense amount of blood in some scenes where Evan comes back from his episodes of going back in time and he's having a seizure and having a seizure and blood's coming out. It can get intense. So for the faint of heart, I wouldn't recommend this. But if you really like a good noir styled film that brings in thought, that you have to think through the film, you can't just go into autopilot and go, "Oh, this film's going to be cool." I'll just autopilot. It's not an Avengers movie. It is not a turn your brain off film. You got to watch it. I'd recommend it to the people who really like to think when they watch something.
I say the same. I very highly recommend this to anybody who wants to watch a very suspenseful thriller. It has you thinking, it has you pondering, it has you scratching your head. You don't know what the fuck is going on for a lot of it, especially right at the beginning. I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I think that anybody that watches it as an adult, because as a child, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. As an adult, and you start to connect the dots, it feels like you are completing a difficult puzzle. Like you get that feeling of relief when you put that last piece in the puzzle and you're like, "Yes, I finally fucking did it." It's the same thing for this film. You're trying to piece this puzzle together, and once it all comes together, your your mind just goes, "Boom, holy shit. I'm relieved. I finally figured this out." It's great. It keeps you pulled in, and I feel like anybody would really enjoy this film. There are some subject things in it that I do warn you about, but for the most part, I don't think many people will be bothered by it because it doesn't really show anything with the child pornography. It just hints towards it.
Yes. Also, do not let your 8 or 10-year-old watch this film.
I
Like,
don't know why the fuck my parents and my uncle said, "Yeah, sit down and watch this with us." I don't it was yeah, don't do that.
do not let your kids watch this film. I will say that now. This film is not for children. Like, when I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, dog got burned alive. My dog. I started feeling emotion towards the dog. And I'm like, my dad's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, years later, I'm like, no, I traumatized it with thinking it was my dog.
This film is rated R for a reason.
Exactly. Oh, our parents cared, but then at the same time, because they want to watch a film. So overall, I think this film stands the test of time. It is now almost 20 years old, and it's still a good film. It's a good thought-provoking film. It really does make you think of the question, if I had the ability to go back in time, would I? To change something. And it's a really good question to ask. And to make a movie about it, that's clever. That's intense. It's clever. It really makes you wonder what's going to happen at the end. What's he going to have to give up to have the happy ending he wants? Yeah, no, it was overall a well-made film.
I agree. I overall thoroughly enjoyed this film. I thought the cinematography was on point. I loved the transitions. The scenes were just the transitions between his timeline and the timeline he's jumping to were great. Music really helped pull you into the scene. The beginning scene in of itself just pulls you right in. I thought the directing was done well. They wanted an idea, they wrote the idea, and they delivered that idea, making you sit there and scratch your head trying to figure out what's going on. I love movies that make me think. Who knows what you would do if you had the opportunity to jump back in time? I feel like I would, but then again, if I did, how much of my life would I fuck up? I have no idea, but it makes you think, and I love that. I love what they delivered. Very highly recommend it. Try it out.
So overall, my score went up from a 6.75 to a 7.5.
Mine did not change from an 8.5.
And now, as we're wrapping up, we're going to talk about next week's episode. It is based on an anime movie that recently came out in the last few years, Josie, Tiger, and the Fish. Now, I watched this trailer. It was in sub because the movie is from Japan. And originally the trailers were coming out in sub. They have a dub one, but I didn't find out at the time. So I watched it in subbed. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the colors. I love the design. I liked the story. It sounded like a very good romance. It looks heartwarming and it looks just downright adorable. I can't wait to see what this is going to be about. So I give this an 8.
I Really, really enjoyed this trailer. From what I can see, it seems like a relationship that starts out rocky, and he is this girl's caretaker, I guess. I don't know. From what the lady was saying, you're going to take care of her. That's what I'm guessing. And I think that what it is it's going to start out as a rocky relationship that becomes more than just a caretaker and a girl he's caring for. They're going to kind of create a romance. Um, the vibrant colors, the art form, the story delivery, just from the trailer, I feel like this is going to be a great show. And I'm a sucker for a great romance, so I also give it an 8.
Don't we all love that nice, cute little romance?
I know quite a few people that don't, but I am a sucker for it. I love it.
It is so good. As we wrap up, guys, I'd like to say thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of Nerd Taku Podcast. You can find us on all social media platforms. We are on Instagram and YouTube at nerd_taku_podcast on Instagram and Kingdom Notes Studios on YouTube. I'm Eli.
I'm Ben.
And as always, guys, have a good week and stay safe.
Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next week.